The irony of this podcast is that my clients do call me daddy.
Qu'est-ce que je vais te nommer?
Welcome back to Saint to Siren podcast with Pamela. I'm also known as the Violatrix. When we finished the last episode, we were talking about my client who had a young wife that he had requested I work on her and turn her into what's known as a hot wife, a wife that sleeps with alpha bulls and treats her husband as a cuck or a cuckold. And he basically is pussy free. She demeans him. There's a wide variety of situations that can involve a hot wife or a cuckoldrix, a gentleman that would like to be in a position, a powerless position, and at the mercy and on his knees to his wife, who dictates everything from whom she fucks, what he does, where his money goes, on and on and on. So remember, these things are a spectrum, and there's no two that are the same. So if you listened to my last podcast episode, you know that he came to me requesting that I teach him, coach him, how to turn his wife into a hot wife. I thought I had enough tools in my arsenal and skill set to make a dent or at least make some progress. But sure enough, I was successful with the whole thing. I told the story in the last podcast episode of how I accomplished this. All of the actions that I told my client to put into place, and he did. And then we weighed the results, and then we measured and kind of tweaked as it went along, but we were successful. Ultimately, I had told him to stay in touch with me and keep me posted. He did not do this. And what my fear was that he was empowering this girl so much, and she was already kind of a bitch. She was definitely narcissistic, but almost sociopathic in her needs being met and not giving a shit about him. So my concern was, with all of the things that we were doing, that she would take it a little too far if I wasn't behind him, beating him in the back, saying, okay, we got to pull it back on this. We have to dial it in on that. And that's exactly what happened. He fell out of touch. It was a good year or even maybe 2 years until I heard from him. For the first few years, it went really well until it didn't. And by not checking in with me, not seeking my advice on how this monster, this Frankenstein that we created, how she needed to be controlled, because now he's not in control anymore. And he doesn't know what he's doing because he's submissive and a cuck. And now she's got control of everything. She's got the car, the plastic surgery, the shopping trips, the BBC, any guy she wants on OnlyFans. He's flying in and putting him up at the Four Seasons. She doesn't come home. She's got a nanny for the baby, on and on and on. And he's become housewife, sole provider, and all of these things. So what happens? She runs rampant on him. At some point, he lets her move back to her mother country, which I'm not going to say because it will definitely identify this couple. She moves back to the mother country, and now she comes back and sees him with their baby from like maybe every 3 or 6 months, dating guys, alpha, big daddy bullcocks, and she was live streaming her events, sending videos, sending texts. They had a nanny cam, and he was able to watch it all. And then she began shutting off the nanny cam. Then she's disappearing for a few days. Then all of a sudden, she's got one guy that she's locked onto. This isn't about being a hot wife, finding bulls. Now she's fallen in love with someone. And of course, the guy's not taking her seriously. He's treating her like shit. And now she's climbing and she's chasing this guy. And what ends up happening, after she falls asleep, he goes through her phone and he finds out that she's making fun of him. She's saying how much she hates her husband, how much she hates being a hot wife and a cuckoldrix, and this wasn't what she wanted. And he makes her sick. And she says terrible things about him, while the husband is building this new venture, this new real estate venture, which was like absolutely insane. It was going to be insanely successful. And it's recently launched and is extremely successful. But he's in the throes of building this thing. He moved to a faraway location to make this business happen. And she's off fucking all of these guys, falling in love with one of them and talking about him terribly. So now he resurfaces, calls me with this information. And I said, I told you to stay in touch. What did you think would be the outcome of a woman you turned into a hot wife? You gave her everything, endless money, cars, all the accoutrements a trophy wife, a trad wife would have. and she has to do nothing to earn it, and you didn't keep a check and balance system on her, and now you cannot go back. Sure enough, the moral of the story is he's talking to divorce lawyers. He's going to have to divorce her. She has absolutely fallen for one of her bulls, and she's demeaned him. He's pointless. He's worthless. He wanted to be that, but within the confines of a hot wife cuckold situation. Now he's without the hot wife cuckold, and he's just pointless, meaningless, vapid, empty, everything, relationship, existence, the whole nine. So that is the story of what happened to my client. Be careful what you wish for, and be careful if you come to me, whether you find me on Instagram, TikTok, probably not TikTok because that's where I have to post my dating advice because I have to post all clean content there. But be careful if you find me on YouTube or my podcast or you find me on Instagram and you come to me for my services, know that I'm going to accomplish whatever it is that you ask me to do. But just like any deal with the devil, there's going to be major drawbacks, concessions, deficits to your life, and there has to be something given for something taken. If you stay with me, I will help make sure that you don't lose your shirt, lose your ass in whatever situation it is. But this is not, there's nowhere to turn for advice like this. There's nowhere to turn for this sort of knowledge. And not a therapist is going to be able to help you. They don't specialize in this stuff. I have been seeing this, talking this, living this with my clients day in and day out for 17 years. There's little to nothing that I have not seen, experienced, or can't make happen for you or talk you through. So caveat emptor. If you come to me for a session, whether it's blackmail, tease and denial, whether it's to make you cry, yeah, I have a lot of executives who like me to make them cry, or play role play being your strict governess or nanny or whatever it is, know that I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. But if you ghost, you won't find the same. You'll never get the same effect. And you'll always be chasing that high, chasing the dragon of the high that I gave you. You won't find anywhere else. But far worse, that leads me to my next point about real blackmail extortion. Let's clear up a few misconceptions about who my clients are, first and foremost. And remember, as I'm delivering this podcast to you or any of my content, there's really two types of listeners, followers that, or even demographic that I'm catering to. I'm catering to women who are curious about what I do, or they too want to do what I do, and they are my coaching students or they're learning from me. Then there's the other group of people, which are typically men, and there's many of whom are my clients, but that are curious about this, or they indulge in this, or they're interested, or they want to learn, or they are thinking about booking a session with me. So as I'm telling these stories, I'm trying to give the information from all vantage points so it makes sense to each and all of these groups of listeners. Let's first clear up who are the men that call me. Who are the men that are interested in this? They are your best friend. They're your neighbor. They're your kid's soccer coach, are your professor. They are Fortune 100, Fortune 50, C-suite executives. What is C-suite? C-suite is CFO, CMO, CEO. Those are C-suite executives, presidents, vice presidents of companies, doctors, lawyers, surgeons. The majority of my clients are attorneys. Some are actual litigation attorneys, many are criminal defense, and then others are corporate attorneys. But the largest majority of my clients are attorneys. Then the next largest group would be finance guys, San Francisco and Wall Street. And then my next biggest group would be surgeons and particularly anesthesiologists. These are the types of men who are calling me. I have a billionaire client whom I reference often. He is in Manhattan and he's an interesting guy. I think he's actually just a little bit older than me, but he's been my client for years. He lives much of the year on a yacht in the Bahamas. The rest of the time, he lives in a penthouse in New York City, and he's got properties all over the world. He owns an incredibly successful and well-known business in Manhattan, and he he has a girlfriend, and he likes to be dominated. Sometimes he is a cuckold to her. She does not live in the same city. She lives across the country. So sometimes he'll call me. He likes me to make him cry. Early on in our very first conversation, I was able to get out of him full name, information, date of birth, social security number, his checking account information, his savings account, all his bank wire transfer numbers. And that is because he is a FinDom client. He is turned on by anything that has to do with financial abuse, anything that has to do with me using him, abusing him, or dominating him, and somehow having that tied to his money. I have had not one, not two, but probably a dozen calls on the platform, the service that I work for. I don't just go out and hand out a business card and find clients on the street. I don't get my clients off of Twitter. Now that I'm doing all of these mediums, I'm getting clients from social media, YouTube, some TikTok, TikTok Lives, and Instagram. But the majority of my clients come to me through the service for whom I have worked for 17 years. I've had the same listing for 17 years, and I've been $3.99 a minute to call me for 17 years, and I do phone with Cam. I have had this happen no less than a dozen times where men have come to me, reached out to me through the service, through email or chat, and said the following: I connected with a girl on here, on said service. I will not mention the name of the service because they're not paying me to promote them. So I refuse to say the name of the service. And I also don't want to get sued for what I'm about to say. These gentlemen would say to me, textbook, the same message every time. I connected with a girl on here. She was great in the beginning. Everything was going well. I wanted to play with her. Sometimes they were playing in blackmail and extortion, and sometimes had nothing to do with blackmail or extortion. Sometimes it could have been in the FinDom realm, and sometimes it was just strictly dominatrix, or it could even have been submissive girl. But either way, they entered into a power exchange, which is what domination and FinDom is. It's an exchange of power. And the girl took it too far, had explicit pictures, videos, and all sorts of information about the man, found out where he worked, or found out his wife's information through Facebook, and began extorting him. The last person to call me and ask for my help on this, the woman, the PSO, the phone sex operator, cam girl, she was extorting him for $25,000, about to send pictures of him in panties with dildos in his mouth, up his ass, to his higher ups, the owners of his company, the president, vice president, etc., the board of directors. Now he's asking me what to do. My response to these men is the same every time. And here's what I say. First of all, I'm very sorry to hear this. Secondly, why do you come to me now when you see I have 1,500 positive feedback? I've been on here 17 years. I have photos. I do phone and phone with Cam, which means you could have verified I am who I say I am. If they just do phone, they can use a voice changer. They could be a man. They could be someone in the process of a sex change and they're on hormones. They have a very high pitched voice and they are a man. Or they could be a girl who's being trafficked, or just a girl who's complicit with a trafficker or a person or a pimp type behind her who's making her do these things. Or she could just be an evil bastard. It could be any of those. So my question is, why did you not come to me in the first place before you called a faceless phone listing, revealed and divulged all of your personal data, and now you're about to be fucked, and now you come to me? There is nothing I can do for you at this point except for tell the police, cancel all your credit cards, put a lock on your SS number, put a lock on your credit files, call your bank, switch your bank accounts, get ahead of it by, once you file the police report, say that you're being extorted and somebody is using AI deepfakes. And lastly, you need to call the platform for whom we work and report this person. A lot of times they tell me they're afraid to go to the police because of the nature of what we do, because of the adult nature and the incredibly embarrassing nature. I am not out there supporting men cheating on their wives or supporting internet porn. That is not what I do. I am a safe place for men who are lifestyle men, kink and fetish lifestyle, from small to severe, who are locked in vanilla marriages, who thought they could kick the habit years ago or they wouldn't need to give in to the addiction. But inevitably, invariably, they can never outrun this addiction. This addiction will rule them. It will rear its head. It will rear its ugly head like a snake. And once you have a kink or a fetish such as this, it never goes away. And what I typically find is men between the ages of 35 and like 42, they come to me because they can't take it another day. Their wife doesn't understand it. She doesn't want to participate. They can't go without the kink or fetish. They can't get off without the kink or fetish, not in the way that they would like to, because of this thing that they experienced when they were 18, 17, 16, 14, whatever it was, some stimuli, whether it was a movie, an actual real life situation, or some event, and it hard locked in their psyche, and they simply cannot live without it. That is what I do. I keep marriages together. I don't let them shame their wives, lie to their wives. I handle things very discreetly. So I'm more of a counselor in this respect, encouraging men to keep this separate from their wives and keep their wives and families safe and bring it to me under the cover of darkness to keep your dirty little secret hidden. So, on the topic of wives and marriages, and how do I feel about men who are married seeking me out for these services? As I mentioned, I am a big fan of men who dabble in this lifestyle, anything alternate lifestyle, alternative lifestyle, dominant, submissive, any sort of extreme kink or fetish. I'm a big fan of a man keeping that away from his marriage and keeping these things separate, especially if the wife doesn't know at the onset and then they try to bring her into these things later on. I've rarely, if ever, seen that work. When a woman goes into a marriage thinking the man is this upstanding family man and she's expecting kind of a vanilla life, vanilla marriage, rarely does it work when he tries to switch it up 5 or 10 years down the road. It just doesn't work. But on that topic, I used to get a lot of calls. Once I got one call, I don't know if the word spread or what happened, but I began getting a lot of calls, and I don't do them anymore, for men that want their wives, they want me to role play their wives being raped, abused, sometimes tortured. Because I was offering role play services, which by the way, I hate the role play. I will have clients send me an email through the system and like a 3-page script they expect me to read and role play as I'm his wife. I'm fucking my my personal trainer. He comes home and finds me, or the more popular one, the personal trainer is a big one, and he finds his wife fucking the personal trainer, and it like super turns him on, but it's not supposed to turn him on, and like you can read through it, and you're like, this is so gay. But the other one that's even more popular is you're the hot girlfriend and he leaves the room and his best friend hits on you and then starts making out with you or starts fucking you. And like those are so incredibly scripted. You'd think these guys were like working in Hollywood with like a full writing team. Like I don't know if they just save these things in their email or their notes and then they send it to various girls and just have various girls play it out over years because these scripts are so finite, they are so detailed. It's like, what is wrong with you? But I hate doing those. And I am more of, obviously, as you know, I'm more of a free talker. So if you try to keep me to reading a script and I have to be an actress, I'm already acting as the Dom. Now I have to act double time as, your dirty girlfriend, best friend, fucker, brother fucker, father fucker, whatever. It's such a pain in the ass. Okay, but I do often get men that want me to walk them down this absolutely disgraceful path of having their wives abused. Everything from I remember running out of stories. So, I'm trying to think on a dime. I'm like, okay, it's like that movie Hostel. We've got your wife strapped to a medical table and we bring someone in who unveils all the shiny, clean instruments. Now we're going to strap her to the wall. I remember doing that. I remember doing like there was a famous story about these guys. I just remember, because I'm not going to say the guy's name because we're not going to make a hero out of him. There was two robbers up in like Boston or something that broke into this family's house and tortured the wife and daughters for days while the dad was tied up in the basement. And like I'm trying to go through every news story in my head, and I'm like, your wife is, we've got her, somebody breaks into the house. We hire a bunch of felons that were just released from prison, and they break into the house and they do this to like, and it was really, believe it or not, I have an ethical and moral in to me for what I do, and I don't espouse this to anybody. I do mention this in my training, but to each his own. I have a moral and ethical obligation to myself. At the end of the day, I would like to join my mother in heaven, not burn in hell nor purgatory. And this is meant as a release and a fun little thing for men who can keep it clean. If I see them spending money that I don't think they have, if I believe that they're addicted to calling me or overspending, they're addicted to findom, they're addicted to gooning, to porn, to remember my guy jerking for Jesus? He crossed an ethical and moral line. He was my Bible Belt guy who liked to talk about me telling him to jerk for Jesus because he had all sorts of, compromised religious moral themes running through his childhood mixed in with sexuality. That is common. I have guys that literally call me and they're on cam and they like to jerk off into their wives' Bibles. So I really shy away from these things. Sometimes I'll absolutely say no. I don't know if I told you guys the story about my most when I let my guard down a little bit with a German guy who wrote to me on the system and said, "Do you do ATM?" I'll tell you that story in a moment, but let me get back to the guys that want their wives severely abused. I don't do those anymore. And those clients, because I think so few women will do it, they will years they will hound me. Can I have another one? Can I have another one? And when they call you, 3 hours later, they wanna call you again, they wanna call you again. Those guys that find a woman who will talk about abusing their wives, torturing their wives, murdering their wives in a sexual fantasy, I think those women are few and far between, so I don't take those calls anymore, and I have guys that will call me for certain fetishes, the death guy fetish that I treated him like Wile E. Coyote, Roadrunner. That got monotonous because I couldn't think of any more ways to kill him. I have guys that call me that have force feed fetishes, and the first thing I will ask them is, "What is your height and weight?" And I always sit at my desk when I'm taking calls, and I type into my computer any BMI calculator, just Google BMI calculator. I'll put in his height and weight, and if he's morbidly obese, I ain't taking him because I'm not gonna have blood on my hands because he's like one greasy pizza slice away from a heart attack, but I'm not doing it. I'm not having that on my hands, and I'm not force feeding him. So I don't do force feed clients. I don't do the ones who have extreme findom addiction. I never do a second call with a guy if I hear he has children in the background or if I hear he's a stay-at-home dad and his obligation is to watching his kids, but he's calling me. Um, I don't take clients who if they will call me and no guy is going to come right out of the gates and be like, I'm obsessed with young girls. They're not going to say that, especially not in this day and age, because all of the sites have cracked down with so much, human trafficking and the Me Too movement and all of these things, which is the appropriate thing. But the sites have cracked down so much that these men are really minding their P's and Q's when they call and ask for, what you'll do. What they will often do is call and say, I have a role play fantasy scenario where you play like a younger girl, but they don't say like, you know, teenage girl. They don't say anything like that. They'll say something like you're 18. As the role play unfolds, or I ask for more information because I'm big on asking questions for a multitude of reasons. A, understanding what kind of session they want. B, understanding where I need to take that session to. And C, I'm trying to vet them to find out if they're a stay and pay long term client. But I'm asking these questions surreptitiously, kind of, you know, them into um, session questions and that sort of thing. They will often send you a role play that involves them and then like their stepdaughter. And the minute I will hear stepdaughter, I'm out. Like I am absolutely out because that is not what I'm here for. I am sure there are women across the internet around the world who will cater to that. I ain't one of them. I have certain goals for what I do for my PSO. One of my goals is to break into the Dubai market. I I believe in my heart of hearts that any of these guys that are buying their wives the big bags and things, they're walking around with the, I don't even know what you call it, the chic type outfit. I believe that many of these men wish they were their wives, at least in what I see in the way that they pamper them. So I'm waiting to break into the Dubai market and have the guys call me who are completely closeted sheiks. And that thing is like so taboo over there. That's a goal. Let's talk about famous people. Have I had famous people call me over the years? Absolutely. Yes, I have. Do I know who they are? No. But I was watching the Charlie Sheen documentary like 2 weeks ago, and I'm watching it and I'm listening because I knew that he was going to cross some themes that would cross over into what I do. And at that very moment, when he said that he was seeking out adult sex services everywhere he could find it, and that he was doing, I don't know if he said OnlyFan or cams or PSO, phone sex operator. At that very moment, I remembered he called me a few years ago, and it was only probably 3 or 4, maybe 3 years ago. And he called me a few days in a row, and he called me back to back to back. They were short calls. He was very sweet. And I said to him, "Where do you live?" I said, "You live in LA, don't you?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Your voice is familiar to me." I said, "You're famous, aren't you?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "You would know me." And I couldn't place the voice. I couldn't place it. And he was so sweet. And he was like, "I can't give you," I think he let me have like a few guesses. And I got close, but I knew his voice so intimately, but I couldn't place it. And the moment I was watching the Charlie Sheen documentary, I said, "Son of a gun." That's who it was. Son of a gun. It was Charlie Sheen calling me. Because when you hear his voice in movies, it's such a distinctive voice. And that will happen often. Someone will call you, they're famous. You hear the voice. You feel like they're a family member. You're running through the Rolodex in your brain of memories of people, but you just can't place. And it turns out the reason why you intimately know them is because you've been watching them on TV or movies for years. So yes, I am absolutely certain Charlie Sheen called me. Amongst other famous people, he was not filthy. He was not dirty. I remember he was gentlemanly. He was sweet. I enjoyed the calls, and he didn't even ask for anything crazy. That's all that I really remember about the calls. I want to wrap up this podcast episode by mentioning this. My intention with this podcast was simply to find a platform where I could speak more freely than I could on TikTok or Instagram or even YouTube, because this is an uncensored platform for me. So I could really tell you the true stories with all the nitty gritty, disgraceful details. I beta tested it to see what it would do. It's a lot of work. I do enjoy it. And the numbers are okay that I'm doing. I understand that they're better than far most, but for me, they're not where I'd like them to be. So if I'm not getting more of a viewership, a listenership, I'm only planning on doing 12 episodes. If I'm not getting the shares and the engagement, the questions, whether it's on, underneath my Spotify or my Apple, questions, poll answering, if people aren't telling me what they want to hear, it becomes increasingly difficult. I'm a wealth of knowledge, but without understanding what the viewers, the listeners want to hear, I don't know where to take this. Your feedback is paramount, it's crucial, it's needed, wanted, warranted, welcomed. And I am doing this to help the women reach the women who wanted the information. It's partly entertaining. In my life, with whom I'm married to, and the level of life that I lead as a mother, and with only one child left to graduate high school in 4 years, I'm out of here. I'm off to Europe. There's not much of a reason for me to be doing this other than helping women. I mean, one can only be led to the conclusion that I'm doing this as a goodwill effort to help the women, because there's no findoms are out there telling the truth. There's a lot of scammers, a lot of fakes, a lot of phonies. There's no one who actually has done this successfully, especially for the amount of years that I have, who's willing to share all their inner secrets. Because I have probably far more coaching students right now wanting sessions than I do gentlemen wanting domination or findom sessions. And I enjoy it. My end game, my end goal is to write my next book, which tells the more in-depth stories. My first book was just a tutorial on how to be a PSO, cam girl, phone sex operator, or OnlyFans girl, how to get yourself safely through the first few years. My goal right now, write my next book, get a literary agent. I mean, my goal for a while was to be on the Real Housewives of New Jersey or Vegas, but clearly that's never going to happen. Andy Cohen hasn't been, knocking on my door. I would love to see this get turned into a Netflix series similar to the Girlfriend Experiment or the Girlfriend Experience with Elvis's granddaughter Riley Keough, because I think that this is in the public consciousness. It's just beginning to emerge, and I think that we all as society would benefit from a level of understanding. How do I know this? Because just log into the dating app Field or Feld, and you will see what you would deem as the squeakiest clean members of society men with, I didn't even know the word hetero flexible was a thing. I didn't even know what that was. I cannot believe what I've seen. I recently downloaded that app by suggestion, and I am learning so much from the male doms. I'm always looking to talk to male doms, daddy doms, alpha doms, pleasure doms, strict doms, dollification doms. What is that? That's the way they want the girl to be turned into a doll. I have so many. So I think on my next episode, I'm going to do a live stream on TikTok and do that as an episode, and then I'm going to do a big Q&A episode, and then I'm going to do an episode where I cover in depth kinks, fetishes, breakdowns, and things you've never even heard of. And somebody's going to have to beg me for the story about the German guy, the ATM German guy. Yeah, you might never recover after hearing it. I will never recover after seeing it. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.
Qu'est-ce que ça peut te nommer?